Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to wait for you guys to tune in. Welcome in. Welcome. Come on in. Come on in. How's everyone doing? Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, YouTube. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Deep Pauline, hey, what's up? Tracy Styles, good morning. If you're new here, let me know where you're tuning in from. Welcome. Um, I got a good topic for you guys today. I keep getting asked this question a lot, so I want to talk about it. Someone says cold day in Philly. It's cold in Atlanta as well. In fact, we have a snowstorm coming this Thursday or Saturday or Sunday. I'm not even sure, so it should be interesting to see how bad the weather is going to be. Hopefully, it's not too bad. Hey, Davey from Philly and Chima from LA, New Jersey in the building. Ali, welcome. Booty Sunshine from Thailand. Welcome. I would definitely love to be in Thailand and cold Atlanta today. And a new follower from Vegas who's a paralegal student. Welcome. And hopefully paralegal school is going well for you. For those of you who don't know me, or if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Aisha Chidoe, and I'm an immigration lawyer here in Atlanta, Florida. I represent clients all over the United States with their immigration matters. So we handle just the variation of everything, family-based cases, humanitarian-based cases, waivers, appeals, some removal cases, some bond cases related to family or humanitarian-based cases. If you'd like to schedule a consult, call us 407-995-6567. Let me put my phone number in the comment box and save it so that way you guys can have it. And as you guys know, I can't talk and type numbers at the same time. So 1 second. And I have a good topic, as I mentioned today, because, a lot of people ask about this. And so I just want to kind of touch on that. Okay, so today I want to talk about proving a good faith marriage. Like, what is a good faith marriage? What is it that USCIS is looking for? And this is applicable to you if you're filing for a marriage-based petition, or if you're filing for removal of conditions on a 2-year temporary green card, because that doesn't change, with, the first application. You still have to prove it again the second time. A lot of people incorrectly assume that good faith marriage, when I say, well, what evidence do you have that your marriage is genuine? Most people just say, well, I have a marriage certificate. A marriage certificate just proves that your marriage is legal. What USCIS is usually looking for good faith marriage relates to things that a day-to-day couple will have. It's an insight into your relationship where if someone is a stranger, when you present all these things to them, they will be able to determine or deduce that you are in a genuine marriage. Because remember, these are strangers reviewing your application. A lot of these people have never met you in their lives and will probably never see you again, after this interview. So because they are trained to doubt, you want to make sure that you really are not sloppy with your evidence. So I wanted to talk about, just kind of break them down into different sections. So the first thing is housing and residence. I've heard a few lawyers say different things. In fact, I heard a lawyer recently say, if you and your spouse don't live together, in a marriage-based case, you will 100% be denied. I 100% and stand 10 toes down that is not a factual statement, because my clients and they're on here, a few of them are probably on live, can tell you that they got their green card approved and they didn't live together. What it is about, if you don't live together, is showing proof of why you don't live together and why it makes logical sense. Does it make your interview process more difficult? Absolutely. But you have to prove why you're not living together. You can't say, oh, this person, we live in the same city. I don't like where they live, so I don't want to live there, or they live with their aunt and I live with my mom. You can't say that. Yes, with that, you're going to be denied. But when you're looking at things that make logical sense, I will give you two examples of logical sense. You have someone here who has an F1 student visa that's maybe in college, or maybe doing their master's program in Texas, or whatever the case may be. And then the other person has a really good job, maybe as a nurse in this other place. Well, maybe not a nurse, but whatever position, job here, right? So on one hand, that person is tenured in this position, and it makes sense that the person will stay here and can show proactively that they've been looking for jobs in the state the other person is. But it is very difficult for someone who's here on an F1 visa to fly. To just decide to relocate, because one, it's not easy to get admission into another school. It's not easy to do a transfer of your F1, and you don't want to violate your legal status. The same applies. So it doesn't make sense, well, one, for that person to uproot their life, right? To the other place, because they may graduate and decide to go somewhere to a different state. So they don't want to uproot it and move there when that's a temporary location, right? The same applies not only in a student capacity. If someone is here on an H-2B visa, H-2B visas are temporary jobs. And, if the person has a child and they're in school in another place, this is a temporary job. So that job project is going to be over. A lot of times in those situations, one of the things that we end up showing is that this person plans to move to the other side, and once they're able to leave that job, but they're staying in that job not to violate their status. But it's not just showing that, they're still going to be watching the way you move, to show that you're a married couple. How often are you guys seeing each other? How often are you guys talking on the phone? What are you doing together to show that this marriage is genuine? And obviously, ultimately, how do you perform in an interview? So now, to get back into those who are purporting that they live together and what you should have, which should be majority of you should be living together. So some of the things that you're going to look for, like when you're looking at housing, you want to think about your lease or rental agreements, right? Your lease or rental agreements should have your spouse listed on there. If you cannot list your spouse on there because, i.e., a social security number, they don't have one, or they don't have an ITN, and they cannot be listed as an occupant, get evidence of that. And what does that look like? Literally apply it to the property management and let them be the ones to say no. And let them say that no in writing, that person cannot be listed because they don't have X, Y, and Z. That way, you can present that to USCIS and say, listen, we try to put this person on there. They don't have a social security number. They don't have an ITN. The property said no, right? But you have that evidence. And once that person gets their social security number, let's say it's before their interview, make that attempt again to put them on there. The same applies for mortgage statements or property deeds. It's harder with a mortgage, especially if it's an immigrant who doesn't have credit history or is not eligible to qualify for a certain loan. But it is actually easy to put your spouse on a deed, should you choose to. So like if you own a property, you can actually do a quit claim deed. I think most people will charge like $100, $200 to do a quit claim deed, where basically you as a spouse, you're changing it from your ownership to both you and your spouse, right? But you're still, the U.S. citizen spouse is still responsible for the mortgage, and the mortgage doesn't change, but you can do that as well as an option, right? It is, of course, a bit more complicated than just going to the lease office, but it's really not that complicated, okay? Other examples would be, of course, rent receipts that show payments from one of both spouses. There's nothing worse than sending receipts that look like someone just printed out a receipt book and just started writing January 1st, 2025, February 1st, 2025, March 1st, 2025, which when you have those look like those were created for immigration purposes, right? Most rental companies, quite frankly, don't even write leases, and stuff. So it's better to show either, the money that's sent, via Zelle, or the money that is, paid in a portal, or like if you go to the rental office, or like, depending on how it works. But when you have those look less believable, honestly. They look like someone just sat down and kind of wrote it, so you want to be mindful of that. Another thing is utility bills. I know some utilities require the person's name to be on your lease or on your deed for them to be included. If that's the case, again, every single one of these people get their no on record. So don't just say they said no. Get no on record so that you can have that to present to show the steps that you've taken or that you took to get these things, and they said no. And otherwise, let them be on the bills or find a bill to put them on, going from your cell phone bills, your water bill, your energy bill, your gas bill, and then just listen different bills, because they don't have to be on all the bills. Just find something to include in your internet, like all of those things, cable bill, you can include them in something, and if, again, it's a case of they're not eligible because they don't have an ITIN or social security number, get it on record. And then same, once they get those taxes or those IRS, not taxes, those ITINs or social security number, file taxes together. If you're filing married separately, just have a good reason that you can explain why you're filing married, filing separately. But you shouldn't be married and filing head of household or single, because that's a red flag. Other things that they would consider to establish residence are going to be things like, your driver's license, your state ID, your car registration, showing that you guys have the same address, and things like that. Okay. Before I move over to household management, I saw a question. Let me just answer that question. What if your spouse does not live here in the United States? How do you present that? Ms. Dugo, that is a really good question. And quite frankly, that's actually so much easier to prove. And that's why when people say that, if you don't cohabit with your spouse, because I'm not talking about where cohabitation is a requirement. I'm specifically only talking about a marriage-based case or removal of conditions, which is an I-751 based on a good faith marriage. In this, because of the simple fact that you can file for your spouse who's outside of the United States, who does not live here, that's why it makes logical sense that if you have a reason why you're not living in the same household, and you can explain that logically to any logical person, you have a shot. Now, if your spouse lives outside of the United States, you're not going to have all this, at least this section on housing things that I talked about. A lot of this is going to be on your visits, like what happens on those visits, your itineraries, if you're staying in a hotel, if you're not staying in a hotel, what did you guys do? Pictures with family, pictures with his friends or her friends, letters, generally people in long distance relationship, there's usually money passing through some way. If that person is sending you money here, if you're sending person money there, keep a record of it. Every time that you guys are on the phone, most people use WhatsApp, or I think I've heard like people using Instagram, like video to chat as well, like save that stuff, so that you can also present it. And also in those cases, I think it's also really important to have a personal statement. Like I'm just big on personal statements, and I will tell you that there are many interviews that officers have complimented the clients because we insisted on a personal statement where the officer's like, I loved hearing about your love story. If you are doing a consular processing, like, K-1 visa or an I-130 and the person's out of the country, I think it's always important to have a personal statement of how you met, how you fell in love, what your day-to-day lives are like, living apart, what you're looking forward to do when you get together and stuff like that. So those would be the things that I would focus on, when you do that. And then for your spouse who's in the consulate, they really want to focus on how well they know you and the kinds of questions you're going to ask them. Because, let's say you here in the US have been married before, or, you have children, they're going to want to know, like, who do you know their children? How old are they? What school do they go to? Like, and all those things. So you want to make sure that anything in your spouse's I-130 that you know about those things, because you will be asked those things at your consulate interview most times. Okay, so let's move on to how else can you prove good faith management, think about, good faith marriage. Think about like your household management and how you manage your house, right? So do you guys have joint purchases? Like, when you guys moved into the apartment or the house, are there purchase receipts for like furniture, like furniture credit cards, like to purchase a furniture or furniture financing, appliances? Do you have emails for delivery of these furnitures to the home? Like how they'll send you like delivery to the house. Everybody has Uber. Like, are you ordering Uber Eats, or DoorDash to the house? Like you get an email of the order, showing the address and delivery. Like these are all little things that even if you don't have a social security number, an ITIN, you can use to establish a shared household or shared a life together. Think about shared maintenance, repair invoices for the house, like, rental insurance for the house. They came to repair something in the house, plumbing. Are you guys getting like mail packages or letters or envelopes that say Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. and Mr. or the Smiths or whatever it is? Like those are going to be some things too that support a good faith marriage. And then, let's talk about financial ties, financial entanglement. I know you guys have heard me say this all the time. Financial entanglement is very, very important. And how do you entangle yourself financially? Because to USCIS, and to everybody really, part of marriage, marriage is essentially like a contract, right? You enter in this contract as one, and we plan to be bound financially, which is why literally, even when you file for IRS, you're both liable. Like when I said IRS, when you file your taxes, you're both liable for anything you owe, or if there's anything due, it's to the two of you, regardless of whose income it's coming from, right? So in scenarios like that, you want to try to have some joint bank accounts, bank statements where your marital address is listed. Some people will say, oh, I don't have a social security number. I don't, but there are many banks that will allow you to open a bank account. So that's one research you can do, to see which banks allow you to do that so you can get one, and when you do open a bank account, I cannot stress this enough. You cannot open a ceremonial bank account for the purpose of immigration. If you as a married couple are opening a bank account, your bank account should be used for exactly what it's meant for. So if it's for household expenses, for shopping, for Uber Eats, to pay some utilities, but it cannot be a dormant bank account, especially if it is a checking account. Now, if it is a savings account, it makes sense that your savings account, you're not spending out of it, but we also need to see that you're putting money in the savings account, right, to save, because if you just open it and have $100 in there and it's been 12 months old since it's been opened and it's just a flat $100 on the savings, then it's not really a strong or credible evidence, right? Same applies to joint credit cards. Basically it's similar to a joint bank account. If it's a joint credit cards, you don't necessarily need to use it for bills, but you can always add an authorized user on those ones. Think also about financial ties will be things like insurance. All insurance is not created equal. The most important insurance, or the insurance that's the most heavily weighted, is going to be health insurance. Why? Because health insurance is going to be the most expensive unless you have like super luxury vehicles, right? And when there is skin in the game financially, it is more likely than not that this is a genuine marriage. If your spouse can put you on the health insurance, that will be wonderful. Again, you can most likely use your ITIN if you don't have a social security number. One question that a lot of newlyweds don't know, or may not know, but you're going to learn today if you're watching this live and you're newlywed, is that when you marry and the person has health insurance, you have a 30-day qualifying life event. What does that mean? It means that even if the insurance period is over, like annual enrollment is over, once something changes like that, it's considered a qualifying life event. It's considered a qualifying life event, and they will allow you to add someone on. Another qualifying life event is also, man, my people are beeping me today. Another qualifying life event would be if you relocated to another state. And one thing about immigrants, they love to relocate, because I can't tell you how many address changes that people request that we do for them. So if you're moving from one state to the other, that's also another opportunity to get on the insurance. Other good insurance are going to be car insurance, renters insurance, homeowners insurance, dental, visual. Personally, I know some people get life insurance. Personally, I don't think that life insurance, in my experience, carries weight unless it is a significant amount of life insurance, because life insurance is traditionally very low from a monthly cost. If you're only paying $20 for that, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to get life insurance. Now, when you were paying for $1 million life insurance and you're spending $1,000 a month or $500 a month or whatever it is to maintain that life insurance, then it counts. I'm not saying you should get a $1 million life insurance, but I'm saying you got to have skin in the game. But like $20,000 life insurance is really not. It's really not. You're barely paying anything, so it's not as strong as it should be. And then think about photos and lifestyle evidence. Like, what is your lifestyle like? How can USCIS see your lifestyle? Sometimes people think like, oh, I'm going to send a picture of us in the bedroom, like making out, like two of us doing selfies. Like, this is what USCIS does not care about that. Or the people who send crappy wedding pictures. What do I mean by crappy wedding pictures? If you do not put any effort on your wedding day to get dressed, to get your hair done, to brush your hair, to put on a nice outfit, and you're wearing like sweats or your hair's not combed, like, you're all over the place. If you don't take that seriously, how can you expect USCIS to take your marriage seriously? Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense to you guys. So if you know you didn't take your court wedding seriously, you have no business submitting those pictures, because you're literally creating the doubt. You're literally the detriment to your own case. Now, if you have a nice wedding, if you have a wedding where, there are a lot of people there, you have a wedding gown, a lovely engagement shoot, and all of that, send those, because again, there's skin in the game. You put in effort, you spent money to plan that. But again, if it is just 1-2 pictures with the someone in the courthouse, and just nothing, you don't even get yourself dressed, it's not worth sending. The types of pictures that make sense and are more credible are going to be pictures of your shared life together, especially with people. Meaning, you're hanging out with his family, her family, with friends, going out to places that matter, places that are important to you. When USCIS asks you, you can say, one thing we're connected on, i.e., let's say you're Jamaican, we have a lot of Jamaican clients, maybe something you guys love is like, going clubbing, you like dance hall or whatever it is. Like, pictures together there, like enjoying yourself and showing like, this is one of the things that we connected on, right? Or we love soccer, you guys going to hang out with your soccer buddies and stuff like that. So you want to think about pictures that way. If there are pictures in the household, you want to make sure that the pictures in the household reflect your belongings in the background. There's a decor in the background. There's everything that shows that this is a normal household and your day-to-day life. Okay. And then same thing, with holidays, Christmas, Valentine's Day, those are great pictures to send. Also, something that is really good, which immigrants struggle with this a lot, which I found it interesting when I came into this this field of law. It's crazy because this year is going to be my 10th year in this law firm, which is kind of crazy because time flew by so quickly. But if you do post your spouse on social media, like, you guys hung out and you posted a date night or whatever it is, those pictures are much more powerful than a picture that both of you took yourself, because because when you put yourself out to the world, to say to the world, this is my boo, this is my man, this is my woman, whatever it is more likely than not that this is a genuine marriage. And especially where the hearts, emojis, comments, screenshot that bad boy. That's good. Okay, let's see what else. And then, just community recognition, family recognition, which would, and what does that look like? Those could be things like affidavits from neighbors, family, friends, anyone that, knows you guys, knows your relationship, may have even hung out with you guys when you were dating or after you got married. They can write, a letter confirming that they know you guys and you have a genuine marriage. Those are going to be good evidence to give. If you guys belong to a church, a mosque, anything like any community, where membership or registration is required, you can always get like proof of that, like to show that as well, or if you have children or the other person has children and you're listed as an emergency contact, or maybe they've emailed you to come pick up the child or emailed you about homework or something going on in school, those are also great, documents to send. So this is just a summary. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but I know you guys ask a lot about this. So I decided to throw you guys this bone today. Let me answer some questions because I know I'm about to run out of time. But if you have all these things, you're not going to have a problem. The key is you don't want to have these things after they've sent you an RFE, and that's when you start getting them. You start getting them after you get an RFE. USCIS is going to say, you're only doing this because we sent you a request for evidence or we sent you a notice of intent to deny, right? So you want to have those things organically, like any other married couple, where you kind of get these things naturally and organically. All right, let's see some questions. Okay. Someone says you can just fix your pictures with AI if you don't have money for the fancy stuff. Not really sure what that is in reference to, but you don't need to fix your pictures with AI. It's you just want genuine, authentic pictures that are real. You don't have to do anything fancy. If you have a Samsung, an Android, an iPhone, you should be able to get good pictures. There's no such thing as I don't know if you're referring to me saying, like, for instance, you go to a court wedding and you don't bother to brush your hair. You don't need to have money to brush your hair. Okay. You don't need to have money to see how you can get your clothes ironed. Shoot, you can go to your neighbor and ask them to borrow their iron and iron the dress that you're going to wear to your wedding day. So those are things that don't require money, but show effort into being the best, or appearing the best to your spouse, on something that's such a meaningful day to most people. Someone says, foreign big energy says, I need to know about people who need to file for themselves. You're here talking about marriage. That's no information to me. Well, I'm sorry for that it's no information to you. You may want to log off or schedule a consult for yourself, because specifically today, the topic literally says proving good faith marriage. Like, I am not going to cover everybody, in all my lives. And, I don't owe you anything. I don't even know who you are, so you're not entitled to me teaching you anything. So feel free to, log off this live since it's not applicable to you. With health insurance costs jumping so much, is that still necessary if you can't afford it for both of you? So Cyber Godfrey, this is a very good question. And I want to specifically point out, I have listed a slurry, like just a bunch of things here. But I have not said anywhere in this live that if you don't have one of these things, you're going to be disqualified. What I am doing is I am telling you guys, here are some examples of things that are considered for good faith marriage. It does not mean if you don't have one thing on this list that you'll be denied. It means if you wanted to know the things that carry weight, this is the list. Look through this list. What do you have on here? What are some things that you can get on here? If you can't get health insurance, get something else, on the list. Don't go bankrupt because you're trying to there are many ways to prove good faith marriage. It's not only health insurance. So get something else if you're not able to get health insurance. All right. All right, let's see. Do you think K-1 visas are included in the immigrant visa policy for 75 countries? Please enlighten me. I will enlighten you once we actually have the information, because we don't. Let's see. Going on an interview and it's 9 months now and you do not hear anything, what must I do? Anetta, the answer is going to depend on what country you are from. So you can comment and let me know what country you're from, and then I will tell you. What if your spouse lied and is on HRA? I don't know what HRA is. What's the acronym for? I submitted my VAWA in May of 2025. I got my receipt notice in January of 2026. Or you're commenting to somebody else. How long is it taking to get a work permit if you filed with the I-485, adjustment of status? Refined gem, again, the question is going to depend on what country you're from, because that's a thing now. Okay, let's see. Let's see what other questions. Okay, let me take some questions on Facebook. Oh, actually, I gotta go, guys. I just looked at the time. Okay, I'll just answer this question. So good morning. I'm a current client. I have a friend who's been held by ICE. He's married to a U.S. citizen and seeking help. I've recommended her to you. Oh, so sorry about that. Yeah, thank you so much for the recommendation. Yeah, so the first thing we'll have to see is if the person is eligible for bond, because that'll be the first thing. And then they're most likely going to have to, if they get released and they're able to pay the bond, then they'll have to then finish the adjustment of status in immigration court. But we'll be happy to help them if we can. All right, guys, I gotta go. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week. If I didn't answer your question or if this topic was not relevant to you, feel free to schedule a consultation to discuss your own personal needs. All right, have a great day, everyone. Bye.